can say, because of perhaps our immunities that we have acquired over the years of facing so many diseases, that is the lowest death rate that we have compared to these large countries. Of course, I don't go by the Chinese statistics because I don't know what they did for it and whether the statistics are reliable. But generally speaking, countries which are open countries and large countries, whether it's Brazil or United States or Canada and so on, the rate of deaths, the death rate from corona is the lowest. What is happening is that we are suddenly, our discipline is breaking down. First, I think we went too fast into the lockdown. Within a few hours, so perhaps 5 days notice should have been given. But then it did produce results. And now we have a situation where, we are a little desperate. For example, the NEET examination that's going to take place is bound to spread corona in a big way, because you're asking people to go to classrooms, sit there and do the exam and travel over distances. You can't do any pre-checking for them. So, but we have to do it. So, or at least this is how the government feels. And therefore, that will be a factor. And then when you have people not maintaining social distance, then of course this will increase. But still, I would say, put together with my knowledge of my talking to experts in the field, in particularly All India Medical Institute and other places, I think that we should see it sort of depleted by the end of September and probably disappear by the end of this year. But I don't think that should be used as an excuse, because I'm saying this because the economy is in, as you mentioned in your introductory remark, Ms. Kirloskar, that this economy is in a terrible shape. Now, that is not induced by coronavirus. It was declining anyway, only that our media was not putting it out. And when I wrote op-eds, people cursed me, said you're criticizing your own party and so on. But now the finance ministry has come out with a document called Macroeconomic Trends of June 30th of this year, which confirms what I had been saying, that the rate of growth of GDP, for example, has been declining since 2015-16. And in this first quarter of this year, before the corona hit us, we had our growth rate was down to 3.1%, which is perhaps the lowest, because even during the Soviet model period and this planning and so on, we used to have 3.5% per year. So therefore, this decline has taken place because of a fatal flaw in our economic policy. And that policy is that we have, the interest rates are too high. The rates of return for fixed deposits too low. The income tax is a great harassment. So many people divert their money out so that you don't have to pay tax. Those go into non-essential areas, perhaps into luxuries and other things where there's no accounting. So the rate of savings is lower than it should be because of our income tax. And then the jacking up of the interest rate that was done by the earlier governors of the Reserve Bank, like Raghuram Rajan, actually harmed the medium and small industries, which occupy about 50% of our labor in the industrial area. The organized industries occupy much less, because we have to also allow for the employment in the service industry, in the transportation industry, and so on. So compared to the organized industry, the MSME industries are employing close to 51-52% of the labor force. And they have all been shut down because they are unable to pay the loans. and there's hardly any proper provision for it, at least so far. And this can be turned around. All you have to do is lower the interest rate and give the money. People say, where does the money come from? As an economist, I can tell you that if there is a shortage of demand, which is what is India is today, and an excess of supply relative to that demand, then printing notes in abundance will not harm your economy. And the best proof is that of the American Depression of 1930s, 20s, where originally the President of the United States was advised that if you lower the wage rates, then the demand for labor will go up and therefore unemployment will be wiped out. And when he did that, by working with the collective bargaining with the unions, and got a 10% cut in the wages done, he found actually the unemployment increased. And that was because when you cut wages, you also cut purchasing power. And if there is if you create that demand shortage, then there will be less people to buy. So therefore, the growth rate will come down. And India's problem has been from quite some time, for the last 4 or 5 years, a demand shortage problem. And the supply relative to that has been sufficient. That's why you see automobile companies, you go to the showrooms, they're all standing out there, nobody's buying them. There's so much inventory today in these. So our focus should have been, and our government has not focused like that, the focus should have been how to put money into the hands of people. There are ways. If it's a middle class, you put them in the bank account. This is what Trump has done. Trump has put it directly into the bank accounts of the working class, those who have payrolls and so on. In our country, we have a large section of population which doesn't have bank accounts, or at least they don't have that kind of pay that is credited into bank accounts. And they were walking the streets back home, for example, the so-called migrant laborers. Now, how do you give them? Hand it over, give it to them as you meet them. They are all, you can easily recognize them. So where do you get that money? Print those notes and give it to them. They will go and buy. The kirana shop will will open up, and the demand will then generate incomes which will then will go into further production and further demand for inputs and so on. So this cycle has not been yet utilized by our government. I'm sorry, I've been writing to the Prime Minister regularly, but he has not paid any attention. And some of the advice people give him is so bad. I don't know why he recycles them and announces that. For example, he said, I will get India's GDP to become to $5 trillion by 2024. When did he say it? As soon as he got his second term on 2019. And I wrote him a letter saying that, you see, if you double your income in 5 years, you have to have a growth rate of 14.4%. Then he went on to say that the agricultural income will be doubled in 4 years. That means 18.8%. So, I don't mind if we achieve 14.4% or 18.8%, but obviously he puts a proposal, and I don't think anybody has the nerve to tell him, no, this can't be done, or if you want to do it, you have to do this. And I would say today, if you want the economy to, the Indian economy to succeed, then the first thing you should do, in my opinion, is to abolish income tax, because the agriculture income is not income taxed. The people who have low wages, low income, they're below the cutoff point. And then the very rich have chartered accountants who can perform miracles for them. And the only people who are affected is the middle class, the upper middle class, the lower middle class, the middle class, the new entrepreneurs, and so on. And more than paying the tax, the harassment of meeting the demands of the income tax people that has become a kind of a nightmare for most people. At the same time, we have introduced laws which are more complicated than any computer science can even figure out, and that is the GST. GST is a complete disaster. I had opposed it alone in Parliament. The entire Parliament voted for it. Congress obviously would vote for it because it was Congress proposal, which Mr. Arun Jaitley adopted. And what was even more shocking was that the government decided that in order to implement the GST, it has to take over the collection of indirect taxes also. Earlier on, the states used to collect the indirect taxes and then forward minus their share to the center. But what they found, what the government did is said, no, if we are going to computerize the whole thing and give, ask people to pay tax at only one point, then if a product is produced in Maharashtra and sold in Madhya Pradesh, then Maharashtra will lose its taxes, and all the taxes will be gained by Madhya Pradesh. So there must be a distributional procedure. So it was decided that the center, which could not under the constitution collect indirect taxes, we brought in a constitutional amendment which I opposed, and they couldn't collect these taxes, but they finally used their bureaucratic machinery to collect these taxes, but they put it in a new body created called GSTN, gross